Assassin's Creed Valhalla got another trailer during the Xbox Series X First Look stream this morning. We're going to dive in and pick apart all the details that we can. In case you missed it, I made a video earlier this week detailing 101 things you need to know from the cinematic trailer and all of the interviews with press that Ubisoft did shortly after. That covers a lot of information that I'm going to be referring to in this video, so if you haven't checked it out, click on the screen now. Before we jump in, I definitely have to address the elephant in the room. Before you type, "This wasn't gameplay" in all caps in the comments, everyone, including me, was expecting gameplay from this trailer. It's called a gameplay trailer. It's fair to say the primary reason a lot of people tuned into the stream was to see Assassin's Creed Valhalla gameplay. And what we got was a gameplay trailer. The result was mostly everyone being a little disappointed, or a lot disappointed if you're this guy. I do think there's a difference between gameplay and a gameplay trailer. The latter tends to be in-game footage shot from cinematic angles that we typically don't see in the game, with no HUD or UI. Basically like a photo mode, but for video within a game. It's cinematic. It's a way to show off how the game looks without all the busy elements that comes along with raw gameplay footage. The thing is, Ubisoft has been doing this for years with the Assassin's Creed games, most recently with Origins and Odyssey. If you watch those gameplay trailers, they look very similar to this one. The problem is, it came off entirely wrong today, for many reasons. First off, we need to come up with better terminology for our trailers to distinguish between all of the different types, because there's way too many. We have raw gameplay, gameplay commentary, gameplay trailer, cinematic trailer, CG trailer, there's so many. For me, the best description for today's trailer is probably cinematic or in-game. The problem with cinematic trailer is that typically people think CG trailer when you say cinematic, but this was in-game footage. But at the same time, can you really call this gameplay? Even the game's director, Ashraf Ismail, pointed this out on Twitter beforehand, calling it a first look at gameplay. He knew it wasn't raw gameplay, and people were expecting that. He pointed that out, but marketing doesn't, point out what the creative director says on Twitter. The next part of this was Xbox, who has been hyping up this stream as the first gameplay reveal for its next console, the Xbox Series X. If you ask the general audience, which Jeff Keighley did on Twitter, you can see that most people don't think that what they showed was gameplay. They were disappointed. It was a series of trailers that used in-game footage, not raw gameplay. This is a misunderstanding based on perception and what people consider to be gameplay and what they expected to see from this. Another angle that made this fall flat was the timing for Ubisoft. The fact that they just dropped that amazing cinematic trailer just last week. There was a ton of information through interviews and people were extremely hyped. I made a 101 things you need to know video because there was that much stuff. And then today we got this. In a way, we were being set up to get let down by this gameplay trailer. And what's kind of sad at the end of the day for me is that I think there's some really cool stuff in this trailer that most people won't see because they're too upset or they're distracted by the "it's not gameplay" issue. In any case, that's what we're doing in this video. I spent the last few hours parsing out details to share with you guys. So let's finally get to that. At the very beginning, we can clearly see this is another trailer focusing on the male Eivor. We'll have to wait longer until we see the female version. Next, we see a scene in Norway with this Nordic structure, some kind of house. We're not sure if this is a settlement or some isolated something that we'll come across in the world, but it looks very similar to the same Nordic building that we've seen from this screenshot. Next, we see the scenes of a feast, and it's actually two feasts, and the first one, I believe, is a Saxon feast, mainly because at the head of the table in the back of the shot, there's a chair which looks very similar to the chair that King Alfred is sitting in the cinematic trailer. So I think we can assume that the purpose of this is to show the feasts of the Saxons in their kingdoms in England, and then the Viking feast, which is next. You can see the Viking runic markings on the rafters there, but I think the main purpose of these two scenes is to show a dichotomy between the Saxons who are feasting in England the Vikings who are feasting in Norway. They're different, but they share in this similar ritual of feasting with their loved ones. Next, we get a look at another statue. Now, a lot of people commented on my 101 Things About Valhalla video, pointing out that the statue shown in the cinematic trailer was Tyr because he was missing an arm or a hand, and we know from Norse mythology that that hand was torn off by Fenrir. The problem is, Darby McDevitt, the narrative director on this game, called it Odin in the developer commentary for that cinematic trailer, so something's going on there. But for this one, we can see both arms. There's no missing arms, so we know it's not Tyr, but there is a hammer. For me, I want to say this is Thor, because that's typically the Norse god that is associated with a hammer. However, it could be Odin, it could be another one. My money's on Thor. We know this game is trying to depict mythology in the way that the Vikings actually believed and saw it. So this is just another element, another Norse god that I'm sure will be relevant to the story. Here we get another look, another angle at the hidden blade, which is different this time. It's worn on the outside of the wrist instead of the inside, so it's a not so hidden blade. This one is very ornate, it's bejeweled even, it's very flashy, and that's part of the way that Eivor is going to approach it according to Ashraf. He thinks this thing is awesome and wants to show it off. Next, we see a shirtless Eivor trying to give Geralt a run for his money with the look there, but we don't know where this is. It could be story related, narrative related. It could be in his settlement. Maybe this is a building that you can explore and go inside. And then we see the front side of Eivor, specifically focusing on his tattoos, which shows off the player customization. We know that within our settlements, we're going to be able to customize the look of Eivor, particularly through the Tattoo Parlor, which is a building that we can gather resources for, build, and then upgrade within our settlement. In this really cool cinematic scene of the Viking longship sailing, we also see a settlement in the background. I think we can assume this is Norway, but more importantly, we see a lot of snow, and this is the first time in a while that we've seen snow featured in an Assassin's Creed game as a main part of it, since I believe Assassin's Creed Rogue. 3 had a lot of snow too, taking place in colonial America, but this is the first time we've seen it in a while in a big way. So I'm excited to see that as a feature of the setting in another Assassin's Creed game. At the end of this short clip, we get a close-up of the sails, which we've seen in previous trailers, but I didn't spend too much time focusing on it. These sails represent Odin, his 2 ravens, Hugin and Munin, excuse me if I mispronounced that, but these represent thought and memory. They were Odin's way of exploring the world and gathering wisdom and information. We can also see the figurehead at the front, which appears to be some kind of horse. Maybe it's a dragon. I'm not 100% positive there, but I'm sure we can assume that we can customize the figurehead on our longships. Moving on, we have this really gorgeous scene of the raven flying above. The raven, once again, is Eivor's animal companion, so we're gonna have some new fun mechanics with the raven in Valhalla. This is very visually similar, I noticed, to the last 2 gameplay trailers from Odyssey and Origins. We always have a view of the animal companion, the eagle, in this case the raven, flying over the protagonist. In the background, we can see some white cliffs, which are typically associated with England. And there are a lot of white cliffs, I'm sure, throughout England. I'm no expert on this, but through a little research, I've found a few. This kind of looks like the Seven Sisters Cliffs of Sussex, which is a place we will get to visit, or generally speaking, we'll get to visit Sussex within Valhalla. Assassin's Creed likes to show off landmarks, and I wouldn't be surprised if what's shown off in this trailer is an actual famous White Cliffs location. Here we get to see a beautiful vista in the dark ages of England and a standing stone at the top of a hill with a bunch of rings, kind of like a stone circle around. Now I'm not exactly sure on this one. There are a lot of standing stones and stone circles throughout England, so I'm sure we're gonna see a lot of these. I can't really pinpoint exactly what this is, if it is a real depiction of a standing stone in Britain. We will see Stonehenge in a bit, but typically these are used for ceremonial and religious purposes, and they're mostly dating back to 4000 to 1500 BC. They are thousands of years old, and way before the events of this game in 870 AD. Here we see another vista with some cool structures in the background, but more importantly in the foreground, we have this Saxon soldier holding a flag or a standard, and this specific flag looks just like the flag for Wessex. We can assume that this guy belongs to King Alfred's army in Wessex. There's not too much to point to in this time-lapse clip other than the cairns, and I believe these are cairns. It could be like a structure that's been burned down or torn down or damaged from war, and these are kind of the remnants of the wall, but they could just be cairns. Typically, standing stones, at least from the limited research I've done, tend to be one stone. So I don't think these are standing stones, but hey, I could be wrong. Next is this scene of a dual wielding character praying, we would assume, perhaps a Templar-like figure. We know that Alfred of Wessex and other characters that have been depicted in Valhalla so far as being Saxon almost always associate with the church in some way. So maybe the church in this game is associated with the Order of the Ancients, very similarly to how the church and the Pope and the papacy and all of that is tied to the Templars in the games that take place after this one. Here we see another ceremonial stone, this time with a bunch of carvings, possibly even runes, and then a lot of antler headdresses kind of scattered around. So this looks very pagan, maybe some kind of ritual or ceremony. It does remind me very much of the woman in the cinematic trailer who's sort of assisting Eivor in his ritual before a fight. Next, we get this really cool time lapse of Stonehenge. And apologies if you're English and I get this wrong, but according to my Wikipedia research, this is in Wiltshire, which is west of Amesbury. And if you match up this location with maps from the Dark Ages of England, this is in Wessex. This is where King Alfred rules. So this is a key location and area of the game, so it's going to be really cool to see Stonehenge and other famous landmarks like this. Here we see Saxon forces perhaps getting ready to defend a fortress or attack from a secret location. Not sure on the context there, but obviously we know this is in the Dark Ages of England, where there was a lot of warring between enemy factions in what was not yet England. It was just a series of kingdoms fighting each other. And then we get a close-up of this guy. Who knows who this guy is? It's all speculation at this point. He could be an ally, he could be an enemy, but the fact that he's coming out of the dark, if we're going to read into that, the thematic nature of this shot and how it's portrayed, maybe this is a secret meeting. Perhaps this guy is Eivor's connection to the Hidden Ones, or he's a member of the Order of the Ancients. Moving on, we have gameplay either of a raid or a fortress assault. Both of those mechanics are huge because they happened in history. They were a big part of what the Vikings did during this time. So we see the process of guiding the longship to a shore, potentially somewhere in the countryside on a riverbank, hopping out of it, and then blowing this horn. Maybe the horn is a gameplay mechanic. We've seen it before. It was in the cinematic trailer, and it's also been in screenshots. So perhaps this is a way to rally your Viking comrades, give them a damage boost, something of that nature. Here we see Eivor sprinting and then absolutely making this guy look like a fool with the flying knee, climbing up his other knee and smacking him with his kneecap right in the face. The gameplay of Valhalla has been described over and over as brutal. The Vikings were a warrior culture. They were known as the Great Heathen Army. And I think this is displayed by a bunch of hand-to-hand combat in this trailer. I think we should absolutely expect to pull off stuff like this, the flying knee in combat in gameplay. This next scene depicts a big assault, a big siege on a fortress. Once again, assaults are a big focus for gameplay. This kind of looks like one Saxon kingdom attacking another, or maybe one kingdom sort of preparing for assault from someone else. But we can see some people moving this structure, this machine, towards the bottom of this shot. And this looks like a battering ram. If you look up, Dark Ages battering rams, a lot of them had like a covering area for the people pushing the battering ram to be protected from things like arrows. Cutting back to Eivor, we see him taking out, just absolutely tackling this guy, and slowing down and looking at this other person. They seem to be another Viking due to the blue, turquoisey coloring that Eivor also has, and those weapons. I guess it could be a Saxon. And this reminds me of the developer interviews series where they mentioned that Eivor would deal with insubordination. He or she is a leader. That is their role in the game. So perhaps this is an ally who needs to be put in their place and bludgeoned in the face very, very hard. Back to the siege, we see Eivor shooting his arrow, but more importantly, in the background, we can see like a lot of battlements and ramparts and giant ballistas and other weapons on the wall. I assume these are going to be part of the gameplay mechanic for assaulting a fortress. We got to get rid of these things or circumvent them, sneak past them, destroy them, something. Next is a short clip of what appears to be a Viking battering ram. It's got the ram figurehead on the front. Again, I think we should look at this and think this is a possible mechanic for raiding a fortress. We can roll in a battering ram from the front and just knock doors down. And this is followed through with the next scene of Eivor storming the keep, storming the fort with all of his Viking brethren. Next scene, we have Eivor showing off and spinning around, throwing his axes, doing some cool moves. This reminds me of a developer interview where they mentioned you can invest in skills that make you more stealthy, or you can go just full-on Viking warrior and do things like throw axes like crazy if you want to. We can expect to see this spinny axe throw move play out in the gameplay, because again, this in-engine, this is actually happening in the game. And finally, to wrap up the gameplay, we have a look at Eivor watching this settlement as it burns to the ground, with a final look at Eivor and a giant scar on his left cheek. Since we have so little footage, I think it's more fun to speculate rather than point out the obvious. I think this symbolizes Eivor struggling with his personal journey, perhaps the consequences of his actions as a leader. Maybe this is his settlement burning to the ground because he failed to defend it. Maybe it's a settlement where there were a lot of friendly people that he had to kill and pillage because he needed resources for his own settlement. Darby McDevitt and Ashraf Ismail both have reference to this being really about Eivor's journey as a leader, and I think this is supposed to sort of hint at that element of the narrative and also tie to the very beginning of the trailer where we see a similar shot of Eivor's face. And that is just about all I could take away from this trailer, which is just over a minute. I know, shocking, I've talked for this long, but I think there's a lot of interesting things if you pause and look closer at what's being shown off in the first look for Valhalla. I was really blown away by the reception on my 101 Things You Need to Know About Valhalla video, so if you're watching this from that video, I want to thank you. Thanks for subscribing, thanks for watching, and welcome to the channel if you're new. As you can tell, I'm really excited for this game, so I am going to continue to cover Valhalla as we get more news. As there's enough things revealed, I will make some more info videos and share everything that you need to know about the game. If you want to stay up to date on Valhalla, remember to subscribe if you have not already. You can also follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and here on YouTube for more updates, more social media stuff. I like to comment on everything video games, so if you're into that, follow me over there. Links in the description below. Big thanks to my patrons who help fund the content that you see on my channel. Those are Bill, Taste the Wine, Spyro, and Jackie. Recently, I just launched a Patreon page where you can choose to support me further if you'd like, in return for exclusive content like text updates, video updates, monthly live Q&As, and a personalized thank you video. For more information, check out my Patreon, link once again in the description below. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you next time.